social media, and other ICT-enabled platforms have made the world a global village, intertwining diverse multicultural environments. At the regional level, the African Union is on a mission to unite the continent and build an integrated, prosperous Africa representing a dynamic force in the international arena. Agenda 2063 calls for a skills revolution, underpinned by science, technology, and innovation to empower our youth. We are creating one market under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the largest free trade agreement in terms of participating countries since the establishment of the WTO. The treaty will open up regional markets to move to more goods and services made in Africa. These changes call for an education system. This calls for our education and training systems to adequately prepare youth to identify opportunities and be able to respond effectively to derive benefit for themselves and to their communities. Social behavioral skills and emotional intelligence and personality development are now a necessary ingredient in molding graduates that can handle every opportunity and dilemma which is in a multicultural setting. Universities that combine research, teaching, and commercialization, challenging students to solve problems, innovate, and reimagine the future while offering the necessary support to viable ideas should become the norm and not an exception. Adapting teaching approaches and techniques that take into account popular culture, including audiovisuals, tools can no longer be a luxury. Policies that enable recognition and compatibility of skills, education, and experience qualification across national borders should be youth technical abilities for the future. We have established more than 150 new technical and vocational training institutions across the country with the state-of-the-art equipment. Consequently, student enrollment in vocational and technical and vocational education training institutions has more than doubled in the last 5 years. And one of the innovations that we've done also is that students who are going for these technical skills are getting government bursary so that they are able to, so that fee is not a barrier. And this has seen us enrolling to the tune of over 100,000 youth who are going in for vocational training. On the job training and work experience, the government has various programs that support youth to gain work experience, to improve their employability. And at the moment, we are running World Bank supported program. We are calling it Kenya Youth Employment and Opportunities Project, which is worth about $100 million, which offers 6 months of job experience for youth aged between 18 and 29 who have attained up to secondary level education. So the youth who enroll are given technical skills, life skills, then attached to an enterprise or a business for 6 months, through which they're able to acquire competence. And what we've seen is that at the moment, the youth that go through this program, we are attaining about 80% employment rate for them. So it is a very good program, and we want to scale it up to so that we have more youth getting into it. In addition, the government just this week has recruited the first cohort of 3,000 youth into the public service for 1 year paid internship. So it is a way of making sure that we have youth who are exposed to all levels of and all service delivery, be it private sector or in the government sector. In supporting entrepreneurship, the government of Kenya has adopted enterprise development through deepening financial access, which is the major constraint as a major policy approach towards job creation for the youth. Various financing vehicles which extend interest-free credit to youth owned businesses have been established. And over the last 5 years, over the last 3 years, we've given to the youth over 300 million US dollars disbursed to the youth. And we believe that with this, we will be able to see more young men and women who are in business. In addition, the government has, through policy, has put a requirement that 30% of annual government procurement is spent, or procurement spend is reserved for the youth, women, and persons with disabilities. So these are deliberate efforts that we've taken as government to ensure that youth are mainstreamed into the opportunities that exist. In the reform area and linkages, our curriculum reviews are ongoing. Curriculum reviews are ongoing for our primary education to technical training to ensure that we develop skills that meet the needs for the job market and our development agenda. I think under the primary, we have adopted what we're calling competence-based curriculum, which encourages young children to self-learn and problem solving. So this is a curriculum that we have launched this year. And then on the technical vocational training, we are reviewing our curriculum so that they respond to the needs of the industry, so that when youth go through the vocational trainings, they are produced fit for purpose, and the purpose here is to serve the industry. The government also has been encouraging changes in the education system to enhance collaboration between industry and training institutions to promote research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Collaboration between learning institutions and industry is one way to narrow the gap between what is required by employers and the supply of technical skills. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by sharing that everywhere one goes in Africa, you will notice the deep hunger in every young person to succeed. From athletes, I think I was selfish here to say in Kenya, but we have now other countries that are emerging, Ethiopia, Uganda, actors from Nigeria, to vendors on our city streets. There is ingenuity and internal drive that keeps our youth hopeful in the face of immense odds facing them. Let us bring our knowledge, experiences, passion, and expertise together and explore practical ways that will harness our aspirations for an empowered youth population in Africa, driving positive transformation on the continent. I have every expectation that the discussions that follow will inspire ideas and actions to make the youth factor count in Africa. I call on all of us to support the Youth Connect Africa model and strategies, and encourage all partners in the private and development sectors to conceive similar initiatives so that we can avail opportunities to as many young Africans as possible. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Now we head over straight to the following session. We will be having TED Talk style, and then we'll have a one-on-one, then young entrepreneurs who will give us some of their testimonies before we head over to questions and answer session. But I'll not take much time. I want to invite my colleague and friend, George Ndirango, all the way from BBC Africa Nairobi, to take us through this session. Welcome, George.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a quick question. Growing up, how many of us were told that they needed to be doctors or wanted to be doctors? Almost everyone. How many of us are actually doctors? Fantastic. Fantastic preempting for the next session. So what we'd like to do is discuss some of the practicalities. When we talk about skills for the future, what happens to the skills that we have now, and how do we link with what the future entails? So the person I'm about to call on stage is a very familiar face. Core to his journey, core to him is developing the next generation of leaders and experts in very relatable fields. Please allow me to welcome Fred Swanika, the founder of ALU, a Ghanaian entrepreneur, of course, a leadership development expert, to now have a one-on-one session to just break down a few of these issues. Please, Fred, a warm round of applause.
George, as you welcome, maybe translators. For those who need translation, please raise your hand so that you can get your translation so that you're not left behind. Thank you very much.
Right. You'll excuse my flu. Check, check. Yeah, perfect. So no pressure, Fred. We have, maybe just to get everyone on the same page. When we were researching what to speak with Fred, like, this is a man who interacts with a lot of young people and tries to connect the dots with even policy experts and tell them what exactly young people are thinking. You'll agree with me that we were just discussing earlier that at this particular point, something that we didn't factor in is that we have more millennials going back to school than 20 years ago. So we had some research, Pew research, that said around 2000, we had about 30% of our parents doing a bachelor's degree and completing it. Now we have about 40% of millennials going back to school, but how they're doing it is different. They're doing either private tuitioning or going your way and developing a certain skill and then implementing it in real life. When we talk about the African youth and the kind of future that we entail, within this taking the lead for skills for the future, where is your mind in how practical things have been and the kind of approach that the African youth and the policymakers are giving it?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, great. Well, I think, we're here to talk about skills for the future. So perhaps maybe why don't we start with thinking through what does the future hold for African youth? And, one of the things that I would say surprised me actually yesterday when we had the opening, is it raining? When we had the opening ceremony, Ruby, the MC, she did a poll where she asked people in the audience to say, what do we consider the key fight for this generation? And different people had, quit the United States of Africa, and there were different comments at different things. And she was talking about how, with previous generations, there had always been a clear goal that people were fighting for, right? They were trying to fight for independence and so forth. So I was surprised that not a single person said jobs. That actually that this, in my mind, is there's one thing that we need to get right. That's the challenge of the century, right? So in my mind, the Africans' youth, this future that they're going into a world where by 2035, we're going to have the largest workforce in the world. And we have a counter going on in the African Leadership Group where we are counting down the days to 2035 because we think 2035 sounds very far away. But if you convert into days, as of today, that's 5,561 days left before we have the largest workforce in the world. So that is not a lot of time. And so what it means is that as we think about this issue of skills for the future, we need to stop thinking conventionally. Because when you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of resources, you have to reimagine, you have to be bold, you have to be unconventional, and you cannot do things the same way, that has been done before. Because no one has ever created 1 billion jobs in 5,561 days for a continent. So therefore, it's going to require our greatest imagination, a concerted effort, and single-minded focus by all the leaders in Africa that this is the single most important thing we must address. How do we create opportunity for this 1 billion workforce that will be there by 2035? And for the young people themselves, it's going to require a different form of self-agency for folks to realize that these jobs will just not be given to them. There's a lot of competition So they're going to have to, young people are going to have to think about how they're going to distinguish themselves against everyone else who's competing. And that government only is not going to be created, is not going to give them jobs. We need private sector, we need entrepreneurship, we need innovation, so that people, the youth are creating their own jobs. And not just waiting for someone to create jobs for them. So this is the era in which, this is the future in which we're going to, and then we need to think about, how do we prepare young people for this very challenging future. But Africa has done this before. We have been able to radically change and solve a problem. If you think about how we caught up with the mobile revolution, where you had a continent that had no, telecoms communication, and we, relatively little, and we were able to reimagine and caught up very quickly. I think we need to do the same thing in terms of how do we create opportunity for young people.
Right. Talking about the future, let's get to what's happening with ALU. The plan is to groom 3 million leaders by 2060. Given the current skills that the young people have, how credible would those leaders be if we were to have them now, so that we know how to adjust as the years go by?
So the way we look at it is that we set a target of 3 million leaders by 2035. So we want to make sure that we can help to create the leadership capacity that can lead what will be 40% of the world's population and the largest workforce. And so we have basically, when I talk to the young leaders at AL Group, which is both African Leadership Academy, African Leadership University, and also this new concept we launched called ALX, I tell them that, I joke with them, I don't really mean this, but I want them to understand the magnitude of the problem that they're facing, or the opportunity that they have. I said, if we have 1 billion jobs that we'll need by 2035, then when you divide that billion by the 3 million leaders we're producing, that's 300 jobs per leader. So my expectation is that every young person who's coming out of here, out of ALU, must see themselves as a job creator, not a job seeker, and that they're going to be the ones who can help to create at least 300 jobs each. So I said by 2035, if I meet any of the young leaders at ALU or AL Group, any of the alumni, they better be employing 300 people each. If we do that, then we create 1 billion jobs, because that's the only way you can justify the investment we're making in them, the privilege that they have to get this kind of education and skills development and so forth. So that's really the ambition of AL, of the whole ecosystem that we've set up. Now, to do that, we have this notion of entrepreneurial leadership, where we're saying we're not developing graduates, we're creating entrepreneurial leaders who are going to be problem solvers and innovators, who are going to really create the opportunity, the jobs for that will need this in less than 6,000 days. And so there's quite a few unique ways we're doing this. One is, if you think about it, when today most education that you have is what I would call just-in-case education, where you go to school and you get a group of facts, a set of facts and figures, just in case it's relevant to you someday. But as your test just showed, most jobs that people enter have not been created yet, and that's going to be, with the pace of change, it's going to be even more severe in the future. And so, what I believe is that you need just-in-time education, because and just-in-time education has 3 characteristics. The first is it starts but it never ends, right? So we need to get away from this notion of a 2-year degree program, a 1-year TVET program, a 3-year undergraduate degree, and think about building education institutions of the future, which are lifelong. You start at the age of 18 and you finish at the age of 70. You're always learning, and you're going in and out of work and learning, and that's how you keep getting the skills just in time for when you need it. The second trait of just-in-time learning is that the purpose is not to teach you facts and figures. The purpose is to teach you how to solve problems and learning how to learn. That is the end goal. It's not that you know this specific fact or that specific thing. You see, because most learning institutions were created, if you think back to the first university in the world, 1,000 years ago, they were built in an era where information was scarce. So you had to go to the university to get it from the head of the professor or from the textbook in the library. But today, we live in a world where information is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. So the purpose of going to school should not be to get those facts and figures. It should be learning how to learn. so that you can adapt as the world changes and keep reinventing yourself for the new skills that are needed. And so that's what we should be measuring, is how well does an institution teach you how to learn, not what did it teach you, right? And then the third thing that is about just-in-time learning. So for example, one of the things we do at ALU is we, instead of giving the students a menu of academic disciplines, like Bachelor of Arts in History, Bachelor of Arts in Chemistry, and so forth, we say rather give them a menu of the biggest challenges facing Africa. So we have a list of the 7 grand challenges: urbanization, healthcare, climate change, governance, youth unemployment, and things like that. And then we have a list of what we call 7 great opportunities. This is where we have been blessed as a continent, and we have unusual competitive advantage we haven't captured yet, like agriculture, natural resource management, wildlife conservation, the arts, things where there's no excuse for Africa not to be competitive, the empowerment of women and so forth. So we ask them not to declare an academic major, but rather to declare mission. Say, identify one of these problems, and then you build your learning around that problem that you want to solve. Right. So you come out as a problem solver and a learner, and then you launch your ventures and you try and solve the problem, but you're also creating jobs in the same place. The final thing about just-in-time learning is that you learn far beyond the classroom, right? You learn from multiple methods, not just in the classroom, because research shows that to acquire any skill, only 10% of that skill can be acquired in the classroom. 10% in the classroom, 20% comes from what they call developmental relationships. This is relationships you have with your mentors and your peers and your coaches. And 70% comes from experience. You learn best by doing. Yet today, most education is only focused on that 10%. So we're only unlocking 10% of human potential with the way traditional education is done, because we're looking at that 10% that's happening in the classroom. So we really believe you need to go beyond and try and unlock the full 100%, including the peer learning and learning by doing and so forth, right? So these are some of the things that we're doing in ALU to really ensure that you're actually developing skills and not just giving knowledge. Because traditional education is a knowledge enterprise, not a skills enterprise. Right. And so we have to reimagine and be bold.
All right, a final question before we throw it to the audience. Just a practical one. We'll hear from our first TED Talk style, TED Talk presenter. We were discussing yesterday, schools and prisons are the system that has not changed over the last couple of years. So when we talk about distorting, I know even Honorable Minister will say, you can't just come in and distort an entire education curriculum and say, we want it this way. It's something that has been tried over the last couple of decades and hasn't worked. Another thing, please raise your hand if you've gone for an interview and they've told you, and you're straight from school, that you need 2 to 5 years of experience. Everyone here. So the practicalities on ground are very different, but we need to hear how governments and educational institutions can adapt, even as we move towards these more complex things like Fourth Industrial Revolution and whatnot. How can they adapt now to this?
Well, firstly, for governments, it requires leadership. Governments need to realize that, we cannot do things the same way. We cannot, when you've got less than 6,000 days to make 1 billion jobs available for a continent, you can't just continue doing the same pathway, because that hasn't worked. It's not going to continue working. And the methods of the past is not going to be what we need for the future. So it requires I honestly believe that African leaders are not taking this issue seriously enough. It needs to be a continental agenda to say we are going to, because there are many policies today that governments could enact that could create a lot of jobs overnight. Don't get in the way of an entrepreneur who wants to start a business. Just make it easy for them, right? Don't make it hard for investors who want to come into your country. There's so many obstacles that, because in my mind, governments really should be doing 3 things. They need to set the rules of engagement, they need to enforce the rules, and then they need to get out of the way to allow the ingenuity of their people to really come to life. And too often in Africa, governments are getting in the way. And so many, many jobs that could be created and so many opportunities for these young people are being blocked. Right. Which is why I think Rwanda is such a great example, because government here really facilitates. They make sure they're helping to get things done. They're not in the way. Right? So that is what we need to do. And then education institutions are notorious for being conservative. And you know, part of the issue is the way in which they assess. The incentives for education institutions are wrong. Most education institutions are measured based on inputs, right? Not on outputs. So today, when we rank universities, we rank them based on the research that they've done. They're knowledge enterprise. You know, the best universities in the world. They're not ranked based on how many entrepreneurs did they create, how many jobs did they create, how many innovations have they solved. It's all about how much research have they done, and how many, you know, and a lot of those kinds of inputs. So you need to change the incentive systems to make sure you know, what it gets measured is what gets done.
Right.
So if you want, you know, institutions to be creating, you know, innovators and entrepreneurs and job creators, then you need to measure them that.
Right.
You know, today to create a new degree in a university, if employers come and they say, we want you to develop, you know, data scientists or engineers or whatever for the fourth industrial revolution, the first faculty committee will be convened to look at the issue for 1 year to discuss. Then they will decide, okay, we're going to go in this direction, and then now you need another year or two to develop the curriculum. Then you go to through the accreditation process, and then you get approval to do that. Now it's year 4. Then you begin recruiting the students for the first class. Now it's year 5. And then they go through a 4-year program. Now it's year 9. And then finally you produce those skills. By then the world has changed. And it's out of date. So you need to be able to adapt and be much more agile so that you realize an issue from industry today, 12 months later, you have the program. And all of that is not built into the education institutions today. So we need completely different ways of doing things. Otherwise, we are doomed as a continent. And that's what we really need to realize.
Fantastic. You've given us a lot of tweets today. I'd be doing him a disservice if we don't invite some questions from the audience. So we'll just have 2 questions before we move to the first speaker for the next session. Please make the questions count. We have only 2 questions. We'll have one there and one here. Please. Please say your name and where you're from.
My name is Pelo Masia. I'm from Lesotho, and I'm a startup. So what I was told was that a good business idea with a good management is profitable, and that lack of jobs means lack of businesses. Then as a young entrepreneur that is told to invest in yourself, we saw that sometimes we have a good business idea but have really bad management skills or have none. At the end, our businesses fail. So I was asking, how do we, as part of the skills that are required in the future, how do we go about as young entrepreneurs to learn management or proper management of the business and the money game in total, in order to have to alleviate this lack of businesses problem, aka lack of jobs?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Lucy. I work in Rwanda for GIZ in the field of TVET and skills development, and I also created a network for professional women called the Career Women's Network, Kigali. And my question relates to career guidance. First of all, I want to thank you because I have an intern from ALU, and she's doing a wonderful job. And yesterday, one of her articles was published, and it's about women in STEM. It's a great article, so I recommend you read it. And that's not the first article she's written, so I'm very happy, and she's doing a great job. And I think it's also, as us more experienced people, we need to give opportunities to young people to show what they can do. When it comes to career guidance, so I have also been struggling with parents and the influence of parents on career decisions. And I liked Georgie's question in the beginning about doctors. So parents sometimes are a bit out of, a bit looking at like their generation's job market. And today, being a lawyer or studying law or medicine is not a very good career choice because this can be automated through artificial intelligence. Here in Rwanda we have Babel Health, and they're already implementing AI in the medical sector. So I think young people are very open to new ideas, to using social media, to pursuing their dreams and passions, but they get stopped because parents don't buy into their dreams, they don't believe it, and they get pushed into a study that they're not really passionate about. How, in terms of ALU, your model is completely disruptive and very good. I agree very much that we need the meta skills to be able to learn new things, to adapt, to keep learning. But how do you deal with parents? How do you get their buy-in? How do you make students more autonomous to take their own decisions and follow their own paths? Could you give some advice?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'll answer those two questions, please. So your first question about how does an entrepreneur who's trying to build a business acquire the skills and the management capabilities to actually be successful? I always say that the best way to learn how to be an entrepreneur is by being an entrepreneur. Or the best way to be a leader is by being a leader. It's not a theoretical thing. You actually learn through doing. It goes back to what I was saying earlier that only 10% of any skill you acquire can be acquired in the classroom. So you learn how to be a manager, a good manager, by practice, and through failure. But practicing and failing without reflection is not learning. So you need to try, fail, get feedback, reflect, learn, and then you keep going, right? And then the other thing I would say is that if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you also need to become self-aware to understand what you're good at and what you're not good at, and make sure you surround yourself by people who are smarter than you and who complement you in the areas where you are weak, so that you can actually, leadership and entrepreneurship is a team sport. It's not an individual sport. So you need to surround yourself with great people, and that's another thing that as young people, we're looking at this future that we have. Let's not think of ourselves as being alone. There's so many that you can do together as peers, right? You can teach each other, you can learn by yourself, you can collaborate and form ventures, and not just be waiting and helpless individuals for someone to give us opportunities. We need to create it, but collaborating with your peers. The question about, my point is, it's not about going for training programs. You're not going to learn how to be a great entrepreneur or leader by going for training programs. You're going to learn it through practice and resilience and learning and failing. And then your question about career guidance, that's an excellent question. One of the things we're doing at ALU is really saying, many times students apply and parents apply and they say, oh, but you don't have this degree and that degree, and then we're trying to tell them, actually, it's not about the degree, it's more about skills. Most, whenever I go around the world, I ask a similar question to what George asked. I ask people in the audience to tell me if they're doing something remotely related to what they studied in college. The answer is never more than 10%. So I'm saying, so why are you trying to then study from some menu which is going to be made obsolete and irrelevant for the world of the future? So we're really trying to educate parents to say, actually, it's these skills, critical thinking, leadership, entrepreneurship, communication, data analysis, decision making. Those are the things that will always be relevant. Problem solving will always be relevant. And trying to get them to say that actually learning how to learn is what matters. So what ultimately wins is when they see the results. So we can say, okay, they can go to a conventional place and study the conventional things, and they have a 45% chance of being unemployed. That's what the data is showing. 45% of university graduates today are unemployed. Or you can come here, and these are all the companies who are raving about the talent that we have. Our students are being hired by the world's top companies. They're working at Google and Facebook and McKinsey and Bain. The world's top companies are saying this is incredible, right? On testimonials from employers like the one you just gave, where we say, actually, you don't believe us, talk to the employers, and they are the ones who actually then become the, hopefully then they bring their parents along. And so, by the way, what's your intern's name? Margaret Medea. Great. I'll get. Great. Thanks. That's how you get the parents involved. Okay, so we basically need to get you to talk to the next parents. Okay, look, here's the proof is in the pudding. It's working. So trust us, and let them, pursue their own dreams and not your dreams. I think that's really what we need to get parents to understand.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a warm round of applause. Fred Swanica, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. So,
1, 2. Right. It will work either way. So you remember me telling you about how the prisons and the schools, they've been the same system for a very long time. The gentleman who I'm about to call next, we're now getting into our TED Talk sessions, where we have 3 speakers, just within 4 minutes, guide us through how their experience has been and how practical things are from their perspective. So Dr. Aaron Kim, an education specialist, CEO and senior research fellow at the Korean-based Seed Institute, over 15 years experience in capacity building, educational consultancy, and curriculum development. Please, warm round of applause.
Okay. First, for your information, he stole my line. There's 2 things that have never changed for the last century. It's prison and school. At least it's true in Korea. It looks the same, it runs the same. Imagine the classroom, it looks the same as the classroom 100 years ago, right? Okay. Why? Because the education system you are now in is a product of industrial age. It's old. As to complement what Fred said, it's basically this. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with what all he said. Okay, I have only 4 minutes, so I'm gonna just jump into the answer. The question I had was, how can development partners can support developing countries to meet the needs of new labor market? Skills mismatch is still, problems around the country. Korea, no exception. Development partners, including Korea, should share not only successes, good stories, but also failures and mistakes as well. That's what I believe the development partners should do, and collaborate with the development partners and the developing countries, governments, and all the stakeholders. We need to collaborate first to accumulate evidence. When I was involved in a different project, the rarest resource was data, the evidences. The evidence we need to make informed decisions. So to come up with the design of projects based on the evidences data. That's what I believe development partners can do, and to support the governments like Rwanda. And then lastly, we need to work together to develop the capacities. The one good example is the project that I'm doing. It's called KEDI, Capacity Development for ICT Education. As you know, ICT is a very important strategy that Rwanda take. But the people need to have the ICT skills, but not just skill, how to use the computers, but also to achieve the goals and then solve the problems. How to use ICT to solve the problems. So we start with the teachers. So teacher training is the primary component of the KEDI project, but also we provide infrastructure and then some environment where teachers can actually use, practice what they've learned. I couldn't be happier because Fred pointed out very important part of the learning, very important, critical, essential components of the learning, reflection. So we not only train teachers for a certain day for certain time, 5 days or 10 days, we just let them go to the field and then try and practice and come back with the failures and mistakes and success stories to reflect and then to grow professionally. So we designed our training program, pre-activity, workshop, and then practicum. So our training program goes all the way to the end of the semester, from the beginning of the semester all the way to the end of the semester next year, starting with a master trainer. We not only just train teachers, but also we work together collaboratively to come up with the solutions, to come up with the training program, local, to meet the needs of locals, districts, and community. The master trainer, head teachers, and our experts, and around education experts work together to come up with their own solutions to meet their needs and challenges. before I go, one thing I would like to tell the young people, like Fred said, learning to learn, how to learn, and problem solving, all important. But remember, we need to go back to the basics, the foundational skills that can be easily transferred to other areas of your career. You have to not only soft skills, things like that. Leadership cannot grow overnight. It takes time. You may never stop learning. Most importantly, you need to understand the foundations, ethics, your value system. It's not about how, it's not about skills, but also who you are. I believe who you are. That's more important issues. Okay, KOICA is committed to work with the developing partners and governments of the developing countries, and that we are trying to do our best to make the innovation, and that we share our stories, not only successes, but failures. I'm happy to do so. Thank you very much.
Well done on setting the bar. Well done on setting the bar with time. No pressure. No pressure to the next speaker. So the next person I'm about to call on stage. So what we'll do, maybe because you're wondering, we'll have 3 speakers, and then the audience will ask questions directly. So please just take note of everything they're saying. So Dr. Rosie has 25 years experience in education and skills development. So working with different countries, you're definitely the perfect person to tell us what the future holds in terms of skills. Thank you.
So what skills do we need for the future? You'll hear a lot today about skills for the digital economy, creative industries, agriculture, telecommunications. This is all true. But I think we need to talk not only about the skills for young people, but also about what enterprises need to do. We need enterprises that are skilled in bridging the gap between youth unemployment and the world of work. To illustrate this, I'd like to tell you about an example from Mozambique of a business that's doing just this. It's building new expertise with employers and bridging the gap. This is desperately needed. As Fred reminded us, young people across the globe face a challenging future. In Mozambique, 500,000 young people enter the labour market every year. Last year, we created 20,000 new jobs. We all need the skills to close this gap. I'm the team leader of JOBA, which is a skills development programme funded by UK Aid and implemented by Mott MacDonald. We award grants to organisations in Mozambique that deliver training for employment. A year ago, we awarded a grant to the Belalan Industrial Park to develop and run an internship scheme. Belalan is not your usual training provider. It's a public-private partnership that manages services to the industrial park: electricity, communications, water, roads, and now they manage internships as well. The Belalan internships are 6 months long. As well as being supported by technical mentors, interns also receive soft skills training. Belalan mobilises employers, finds out what skills they want, recruits young people, and then matches them to an internship. But Belalan is not just a recruitment service. It supports the interns while they develop their new skills and learn how to navigate the workplace. And it's not an NGO. It's an enterprise, part of the business community, but its leadership are absolutely passionate advocates for youth. And this scheme is working. So far, 50% of the young people who are interns are now employed, many of them with their host companies. So what is it about this scheme that policymakers and youth representatives from other places might want to consider? I think we're seeing the emergence of a new intermediary that links young people to employers, that's creating new pathways, that acts locally, that's passionate about youth, and inspires employers to act differently. So what skills do we need for the future? I hope that you agree we need skills to create new kinds of enterprise and together build a different future.
Thank you very much. So 30 more seconds for the next speaker. Thank you. So one more person. I hope you're noting your questions down. We'll have a few more minutes than the previous session to ask questions. Now, if you're in Rwanda and you've been wondering how the labor market and the current skills you're getting at school or within your different institutions and how they're not aligning, this is the person that you need to ask those questions. Vieter, Head of Strategic Capacity Development Department at the Rwanda Development Board, under the Chief Skills Office, mandated to do exactly that. Please, floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I work in Rwanda Development Board, and this is a government institution in charge of promoting investment. It's an investment promotion agency. So since investment is my daily business, let me start by investment. Quite recently, I met an investor. We have an investor who is starting a business here of manufacturing baby diapers in Kigali Special Economic Zone. So he asked me, could you please connect me with the right skills in my factory? So my first question that came in mind, I was like, how many mechanical engineers do you need? So he said, actually, my factory, you need almost 5 people because everything is automated, fully fledged. I was like, oh, this is the right future we are heading to. And he went on and said, I need someone who will help me to connect me with the entire world. That means soft skills, someone who can communicate in more than 2 or 3 languages. And this shows you how really we need to abide, to know how the future, what the future holds in terms of skills and job opportunities. So I was asked by my team to talk about what the government is doing to meet future skills needs. So we can ask ourselves, is the future is going to automation? What does it imply? That implies that automation is taking up some of the jobs. But don't worry. In Africa, we need to be innovative and create things on our own. When we say automation, it's something that sounds very fancy. But let me give you an example. We have a company called Tap and Go. For those who are not in Rwanda, Tap and Go is a transport company. I have a card actually myself. That means I can travel the entire city by loading money on this. So when I talked to an American, he said, is it a credit card? Is it? So he talked about many things. For him, something small, it doesn't matter. But for us, we know what it creates. It helped creating more jobs, actually, than we thought, because there are people loading this money, and it creates more than like 10 jobs from the destination to another. That's an example. So what are the programs we really have, given that context? It's true that the fourth industrial revolution creates opportunities for high-end skills, and we don't have those, mainly because we used to import more skills. But we are really doing a great job as government. Let me give you an example. When we say Rwanda and big data, you must have heard how Rwanda launched the big data center recently, and it will be training skills to be imported even to the region. You must have heard Rwanda and space. We launched first satellite in the air by Rwandans with a support from Japan, but of course, the broader perspective is to make it by Rwandans. You've heard Rwanda and nurturing startups. We have so many programs to nurture startups. We talked about how do we give importance to startups. We have ICT Center of Excellence. Those are kind of incubators and innovation hub, which we are creating for us to make sure that our youth have essential and facilities for them to test and learn what can work and what can not work. So what I can say in a nutshell is that let's really stay connected as youth, because there are many programs out there, and if we stay connected, we make sure that we learn ourselves new skills. We make sure that we can cope with the new changing environment. So if you have started mathematics or whatever, think about, what about starting a new language? What about getting a new a skill without in abnormal or unconditional way? And with that, I may say that government is ready. If I give an example of government of Rwanda, we are really ready and working day and night to be creative and making sure that we avail opportunities that are available for you guys, for you youth, but we need to stay connected and make sure that we learn something that differentiates us from others. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much to the panelists. Please, if you could just have a seat. I'll call back the panelists who are here, the speakers. It's time now for question and answer session. Please, just shoot up your hand if you have any. We have 10 minutes of that, so we'll start like this. So, all right. Oof. I'll do it myself. My first question, right, to Viete. So at the special economic zone, for example, and I'm sure this will not come as a surprise, we have Turkish investors, maybe European investors, American investors, Chinese investors. When they come, in terms of ensuring that we have this amount of people, maybe within Chinese workforce, the Rwandan workforce, how you make sure that we cater to the locals to ensure that they still have jobs regardless. We've had the situation in Kenya, no pressure. We've had the situation in Kenya with the SGR, with the train, where we saw a lot more involvement than we thought, and the local labor force was left out. So we need to know that the local labor force here is very well protected. Please speak to us about that, and then we'll pick the questions.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. This is a really good question. First of all, we need to know what do we have in terms of skills. So we make sure that we are updated on which kind of skills are available in the market. And there are these legal instruments by which we say for any incoming investor that come, however strategic, it must have no more than 3 expatriates working in that project. So we try to limit the number to the expatriates and make sure that it's not something that we say you have to do this, but we say please import not more than 3 expatriates, but this is available experts locally that we can use, and we facilitate having access to those skills. Yeah.
So we have one here, but there's a gentleman at the back who had raised his hand, and you there. So after you, will pass the mic.
Oh, hello. Thank you. First, thank you for your good presentation. I would like to ask questions to Aaron Kim, the Korean expert. Actually, I expect that you are talking about the importance of the building capacity to fully harness ICT because you are the project manager of the CADI project. So, but the interesting thing that I found is you talked about the importance of the fundamental and the foundation skills in terms of the helping youth to have the skills for the future. So would you elaborate about the foundation skills?
Yes, thank you very much. For example, leadership. In order for you to be a leader and you have a leadership capacity, there's no curriculum set for leaderships in schools. Even though we talk about leadership in secondary school and primary school, even high school, college, there's no curriculum for leadership. It's combined of the other, like Fred said, only 10% can teach you about the leadership, but the rest you have to learn from practicing and reflection and interaction. I would say the foundation is not only leadership, but also other soft skills and also learning skills. But more importantly, I think the value system, who you are and what you believe in, what makes you, what helps you decide, what, discernment, and all those foundational skills become, make you the leader in the future, I believe. All those successful leaders in the world, look at them, study them, how they become leaders and how they become successful. It's not only their skills and knowledge, but also their value system and their beliefs. And, it's more importantly, who they are. I believe that's what I meant by foundation skill. Also literacy. You read a lot, you talk a lot, and then interaction. All those can help you have that foundation that can be easily transferred to the other areas. Not just coding or ICT skills, things like that. So foundation skills, who you are. Yes.
My name is Castro from South Africa. My question is directed to Dr. Kim. You mentioned collaboration to accumulate evidence. Would you agree or disagree that the same approach shattered or destroyed the African epistemic knowledge?
Maybe could you elaborate your question again?
My question is the approach to collaborate to accumulate evidence to inform decisions. That's what you mentioned.
Yes.
So I'm asking that would you agree or disagree that the same very approach destroyed or shattered the African epistemic knowledge?
That I don't know whether what kind of collaborative approach it destroyed anything. I'm sorry, I don't know well about that. But what I meant is, we need to share our understanding. Especially development partners. Like I said, when I was involved in different projects in different countries, I was looking for data and basically research studies, but it's rare. It's hard to come by. So I was thinking maybe we need to work together to have a common understanding, a shared understanding. That way we may begin our discussion and based on that shared understanding. That's what I meant. So development partners should involve in more joint research, supporting research, and supporting capacity building of researchers and leaders in this country, so that they have accumulate evidences so that they can make informed decisions later. That's what I meant. I couldn't agree because I don't know.
There's the gentleman with his hand up in a gray jacket and the lady in front in white.
Yes, thank you. My name is Rogers, and I take the lead. I take the lead, and thank you very much, Mr. George, for allowing me this opportunity. Thank you very much, the panelists as well, for the outstanding and amazing sharing that you've just given us in such a beautiful session. It was very informative. Direct to Rose and maybe to Mr. Vietel, really quickly, I want to hear. We say we take the lead this time round. And Rose, you've been having different projects that are working to support youth to transform and also to get employed. I think also Fred mentioned there's a problem of jobs. Fred, we know we don't have jobs. There's a lot of unemployment that is going on. I'm employed myself. Right. I employ myself. But the question is, the institutions and the projects that are being aligned to make sure that the problems of lacking jobs to the youth, most of the times you find that the project itself has more than 90% people who are above the age of youth. Our institutions, the line ministries, the ministers are 50 years. My question to you both, what would you say to the different leaders, and how have you managed to do it in your different projects to make sure that they actually, the projects that are designed to transform or to overcome the problems that are facing the youth, actually the youth take the lead within the projects themselves?
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Just pass the mic just next. We're out of time. We just want to get that's the last question. Please just jump straight to your question.
Yeah, sure. Hi. My name is Habiba, and I'm from Morocco. My question is for Dr. Aaron. You've mentioned teachers training. It comes out that it's one of the major components when we think about system change in education. And the things is that the most challenging part is shifting mindsets. So can you share with us how are you working on making a teacher that has been taught to teach in a certain way for, 20 years, and then just suggest to, just say, okay, today it's 21st century skills and you need to teach that way and that way. So how do you deal with mindset shifting?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. For,
Yes, let's take that one and then
yeah, sure.
she'll take the next one.
Thank you for the question. I promise you, I'm going to share whether it's going to be successful or not with you. Personally, I can promise that. Our strategy is centered around that part. Without changing mindset, they might not be, willing or, happy to practice what they've learned from the training. So we are focusing on mindset. So our training focus on why rather than how. Why we need to use ICT. We try to show them and then help them taste what using ICT for education, what ICT can do for you and your students. So we design some tasks, during the training, and then that task is helping them to actually try and feel, and then get the sense of successes and satisfaction when it comes to using ICT. So we have case studies. We already have some content that we can share with the teachers. So our activities is more like a workshop where people can interact rather than having lecture and listen to the speeches and doing assignment. It's more like have you heard about flipped classroom, right? We're taking that one. And just let them study on themselves and then come to the workshop and then practice and interact. And then where they can feel the sense of success, satisfaction using ICT. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Rosie.
I'll be very quick. Is this on? Hear me? Can the person ask the question hear me? So in the project that I work on at the moment, we have an internship scheme which is separate from the one I just described earlier. And each year we recruit a young person into a one-year internship. And so far we've employed all of the interns we've taken on, and one of those has already been promoted into a management position. So we're trying to create career paths into management positions for young people. The company that manages the project, Mott MacDonald, has an early career professionals scheme, which means that we deliberately manage learning and professional development opportunities for early career professionals. We're not allowed under EU regulations to use words like young. We also recently, a few years ago now, about 4 years ago, won the Young Apprenticeship of the Year award for the very innovative apprenticeship we run for young 16-year-olds who haven't had the opportunity to get into upper secondary and who join our company as junior engineers and then progress through right up to degree level through the apprenticeship qualification. So as an organisation, we're deeply committed to bringing young people into the organisation and up through into management positions.
Right. Just have 20 seconds, yeah?
I'll give 2 examples. I'll give 2 examples of how we're doing it. So it's a matter of how we set our priorities and how we choose our sectors to benefit which audience. For instance, we have this program in agriculture where we take graduates in agriculture who are youth and take them on an intensive 6-month program in partnership with the government of Israel, for instance. So far, we've managed to graduate more 790 graduates in this program. And when they come, We put them in, they have a cooperative, young cooperative in agriculture, and also we place them in different agriculture projects as advisors, and this yield them an income. Another example is that we have this program of internship program, and we've, for instance, managed to commit that every government project which is starting, we have to make sure that there are young Rwandans who are employed in that project as interns. At the same time, learning skills to get that experience required, but also gaining income while that project is going on. We can give more examples, but just in a nutshell, it depends on how do we conceive our projects and which audience we target. So once we have in mind youth, I'm sure he can do a great job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, a warm round of applause, please. We noted the hands go up, so we'll try and rush. We won't have question and answer for this next session. Please, you'll allow me the next people I'm about to call because of time, and also we need to rush for lunch. So we'd like to get to hear from entrepreneurs who've actually done the journey. Please allow me to call on stage Fiston Muruchumura, the founder of Muruchumura Publishing House, and Priscilla Natukunda, a young professional as well, who wears many hats, but today she'll explain what exactly the role ties in with our discussion today. So,
Fiston, Priscilla, maybe to just keep it time, please ensure you only use 5 minutes. Priscilla and Fiston, thank you.
Right. So maybe as Fiston prepares, you wear many hats. So you know how when you go to school and if you're tied to that mentality and you want to get to this fellowship and you want to study this and this, so Priscilla has done that. Obama Fellowship, they've expressed interest, Barbara Bush Fellowship, but you also have your 9 to 5 and you're tied to another particular job. So tell us how your journey has been.
Thank you. Can I stand?
Please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. To start off with, I'm really excited to see the room filled with fellow youth who have traveled different countries to come to Rwanda. For me, that's really, it really shows the potential that we have, the talent, but also the energy that we have. Like Georgie said, I'm right here today to tell you about my experience. It's a humble experience. I'm also still learning, like Mr. Fred Swanika said, so I'm not there yet. As we're sitting here together, we all probably have enjoyed better education than most of our parents. I bet that is right. We have gone to better schools, we have got more exposure than our parents and the other generations had. My idea is the key element is what sets this generation apart. We are in the middle of an extraordinary demographic shift in history. We, as the generation of today, are going from door to door knocking for jobs. We're out here for jobs, knocking from one door to the other. But where are the jobs? I must tell you that to get the right job or to move your business to one level to the other, it takes talent. It takes the right mindset and the true engagement to grasp all these opportunities around us. Today, I want to share with you some of my own experiences, like I said, and my journey, and what brought me to this particular event, but also for the job that I have at the Netherlands Embassy. So, like Georgie said, my name is Priscilla. I work for the Netherlands Embassy here in Kigali. I'm responsible for private sector development, but also capacity development. How did I get here? I want to tell you about my 3 Ps. It could be a coincidence that also my name starts with a P, but I really, really refer to all these Ps all the time. The 3 Ps I'm talking about are known to planet profits, and people know is it about public-private partnerships. The 3 Ps I want to refer to today as a youth that have moved me from A to at least B or will take me to the next level are passion, purpose, and persistence. These 3 Ps for me as a youth have taken me to places, and I believe for any youth, they'll take you from one place to the other. I'll start by telling you about passion. What's that one thing that keeps you awake in the night? What's that one thing that keeps your heartbeat going every single day? If you have that one thing in your mind and you tie all your life around it, believe me, it will take you to the next level. I'll give you my own life experience. I'm now working at the Netherlands Embassy, but believe me, I was at one time an intern where I went to a job thinking it's a job, but I ended up carrying coffee cups. I was almost at the printing machine all day. Did I give up? No, I did not. I took that strength, I took every disadvantage and made it an advantage. The second P is purpose. Where is your focus? Where is the drive? And once you determine this purpose you have in life, and do not get distracted from that, stay focused, you believe in yourself, and you also want to define, where do I want to be as a youth, as an entrepreneur, as a pharmacist, as a gardener, as a farmer? Where do I want to be? If you define that, have the drive, stay within that line, don't lose your time because it's very valuable. Choose your friends and network very wisely because those will make you or break you. Then you'll go to the next level. The third P, which is persistence or perseverance, which also could mean do not give up. This is very, very, very important for the youth. We often start sometimes, but because your boss today told you, oh, Priscilla, you cannot make it, you go back feeling like, oh, I'm not good at my job. You don't have to give up. My own living experiences is I've been to jobs where I go to the bathrooms, cry my face out, but get my makeup back, put my list back on, walk to the next room, smile, and beat those deadlines, and be happy, and give it my 100. So that third P is very, very important. As much as you can be top of your class, given all the exposure, if you cannot push yourself to beat the challenges that you face as a pharmacist, as a gardener, as a farmer, as a teacher, as a young entrepreneur or intrapreneur, it will be difficult for you. So you have to tell yourself every single day, at least for women, I know we cry, or young ladies, we cry often when we're faced with challenges. Wipe those tears, stand up, go to the next meeting. And go to that next meeting like a winner. When you tell that to yourself every single day, believe me, you make it. This leads to my conclusion. I have about a few seconds. I would like to really refer to the speech of my president, His Excellency President Paul Kagame, yesterday at the arena. He really said that all the governments, our leaders and presidents, South Africa, West Africa, East Africa, they give us the platforms. They give us the good governance. They avail these platforms. Youth Connect is going now big. They make the systems very, very conducive for us as the youth. But what we make out of that as the youth is very important. We have the gold in our hands and the diamonds. We have the talent. We have the energy. We have the time. But without using the platforms that the leaders are giving us, it all will die off. So we should use these platforms to scale up. And remember, time is very, very, very valuable. That's all I have to say, my dear friends. Let's take the lead.
Definitely set the bar for you, Fiston. Huh?
Okay, the technical people, where is my video? Okay, thank you very much. I have a small 2-minute video. I will be trying to explain. Basically, I'm Fiston Mudachumura. I'm an entrepreneur. I did my education here in Rwanda in modern languages and publishing. Basically, what we were studying is how can I turn morning, habari, ogenge in Africans, like simple words, into a commodity or a product which can make money. And my first plan out of school, of course, was going, how can I leverage this usual resource that we take for granted, our languages, our simple languages in local languages, and turn these resources, natural resources, into products that can make money. So this is where I came. I started by, this was my first book. I wrote it like 4 years ago. and I was able to build a business of book publishing for kids. Now we are at a cumulative revenue for the past 4 years of around $350,000, and we've employed around 40 authors and artists along the way. Understandably, by 2035, we will have hit that 300 jobs challenge of Mr. Swanika and Elio. So talking about the future skills now, for the past 1 year or so, I've been able, I had the opportunity to travel across the world because of this content. And one thing I saw that as we enter in the fourth industrial revolution, now how we were doing business now, or the jobs were into writing and probably a good designer and an illustrator and editors, and you managed to work with printers, and we do it this way. And so now what I've learned where the world is heading, it's more now how can we turn into the digital contents. So this is, as an entrepreneur, it's up to us to look for opportunities. So I applied for this incubation program called IBS Rwanda. It's supported by RDB and Koika. Basically, what they teach is people or entrepreneurs who are interested in audiovisual content. They come and they incubate you and they train you how can you level up your business. So this is, we are on the prototyping stage. So far we have a content of around 150 concept and storybooks, mainly for kids. And this is our first game application based on this book. It's available on Google Play Store. Now you can download it. So concluding on the future jobs, I think for young entrepreneurs or young Africans who are here, who are interested into content production or content publishing, of course you will need a little bit of coding and gaming, audiovisual, animations. These are the next big things. Our ambition as a company or personal as an entrepreneur is I want to build the next big or bigger Disney straight from Rwanda, Africa. And we welcome anyone who is interested. Thank you.
Yes, please, let's keep the applause going. Fantastic, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll try and have after the last speakers, you come on board and people ask you questions. Sure. Thank you very much for your time, Priscilla, Fiston. So young people are doing amazing things. Let's just continue with that same spirit. We'd like to get it back into the TED Talk style to hear from two last speakers before we break out. We have Elizabeth Tanya Masiiwa, who's the Executive Director at Delta Philanthropies and Board Member of Higher Life Foundation, to guide us through what her experience has been and how it relates to us today. Please, stage is all yours. We have the clock.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I have some really big shoes to fill this morning because my mother was supposed to be a keynote in this session, but she couldn't make it, so you got me. So about 23 years ago, my parents, whilst they were broke and praying for a license to start the first telecom company in my home country, Zimbabwe, they founded the Higher Life Foundation. And the foundation, their goal was one thing, and it was simple. We are going to support orphaned and vulnerable children. And so they started with about 10 scholarships, and before they knew it, in 2019, we have now supported over 250,000 students across Africa with no donor funding. So do you get what I mean about those big shoes again? So as they started to give one scholarship after another, they began to identify some problems. First, there was teacher absenteeism, lack of textbooks, and so they turned to what we do best, technology. We built Receivor Digital Learning, and now parents, teachers, students can log onto our platform where they can get materials, they can get extra lessons, even sort of your collaborative study. And now we have seen improved test scores, not only in our students, but in the hundreds of thousands of students that are using our platform. To date, we have about 1.5 million registered users on Recevo. And this is just primary and secondary education. And so as these little ones that had gotten scholarships began to graduate high school and university, we started to see other problems. They were graduating into a job market with very limited opportunities. I mean, according to the African Development Bank, a third of young people are unemployed. Another third are vulnerably employed, and only 1 in 6 are wage employed. And this has become a reality for many Africans across the continent. And so we opened Muzinda Hub. It's a coding academy where people come in, they learn to code, and we now have a presence in Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Botswana. But we needed to link these skilled young people to some kind of job opportunity, or at least a project. And so Cassava Smart Tech, which is our second largest company in the Econet group, started a platform called Tech Nights. Basically, if you're a plumber or a coder or a writer, you log on to Tech Nights and it can pair you with a project. And that way you can create your own sustainable livelihoods. But there are some skills that technology can't teach you. And the one thing we've been talking about a lot today is leadership. So my mom and I went on a little adventure. We came up with the idea, and literally from idea to open day was 6 months. We decided to open our own academy, which is called the Star Leadership Academy. So we got into a car and used a little plane, and we headhunted the top 40 academically gifted students across Zimbabwe. I mean, some of our students have as many as 17 A's at O levels. You can't even take 17 subjects. And so we brought them to our beautiful campus that we built for them. It's a gap year. And we have spent the year, like literally spending all our time with them. They learn AI, social entrepreneurship, volunteerism, servant leadership, the characteristics that we think are important to not only be a leader, but represent the skills of the future. And so one of the things I liked that I heard earlier was that there are a couple of entrepreneurs here today. Now, I'm also a youth. And by youth, I don't mean like 45. Some people, even at 60 call themselves youth. I'm under 30. And when I was in my grad school, I did the one naive thing no one tells you is like the most difficult thing on earth, which is to start my own tech startup. And I had been engrossed in the world of technology, innovation, education. And I heard something that really bothered me, that around the world, more than 100 million kids didn't have access to early childhood education. So I built this technology that is focused on teachers. And we help teachers give their students the best, but we get to collect that data and make data-driven decisions in the classroom. So in my last 10 seconds, which they owe me, you might be wondering, how did you guys as a company, as a family, as a foundation, get to working with all these interventions, literally from birth all the way to employment? Well, one day we sat together and we had a vision. Our vision was that by 2050, we want to see our African nations be upper middle income economies. That's a GDP per capita of 12,500. And this is the result and power of that vision. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Lastly, we have John Matogo, IBM Head of East Africa University and Academy Outreach.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to share 3 stories that will just bring perspective to what we've been discussing during this session. The first one is from my experience when I ran an innovation center about 6 years ago back in Nairobi. During that time, we had a group of young people who joined the innovation center. There's this one individual who came in, and during that period of time, he was still in his first year in university, was able to earn, at that time, about $1,500 a month. And what he was doing was what we call freelance work, okay? Eventually, he did not complete his university degree, but he continued on this path. And he was self-taught, by the way. The second experience that I'll share with you, a little closer, is an experience I had talking to a young lady about that height. She told me she was 4 years old, and we're having a conversation just like everyone else, right? Eventually, she told me she has got brothers and sisters in different parts of the world, and she was made in France. Okay, so I'll just leave you with that thought. She was made in France, so this was a robot. The final experience I will share with you is, again, just one that is very recent. During my trips in Ethiopia, hailed a taxi. Using your phone, you could hail a taxi. And in the process of taking my taxi ride, I was discussing with the taxi driver. This was late in the evening. So I was asking him how his day was, etc. So he told me that during the daytime, what he does is he writes articles for a sports magazine. So he's a journalist, as well as he freelances as a taxi driver using this ride-hailing app. So what's the reason why I'm sharing these stories? 3 different stories over different time frame, and this relates to what we're seeing in the way that we're seeing the changing world of work. We're seeing different skill sets that different individuals have, and to what one speaker alluded to earlier, what we are calling the gig economy. So why am I telling you these things? Number one is that the kinds of opportunities that we're seeing emerging in this changing workspace are not the traditional ones that we've been seeing. Someone talked about who wanted to be a doctor and so on. So we're seeing different individuals with different skills accessing different opportunities, and in the process having gainful employment. The final piece that's through these different experiences is we see this impact of technology. One was 6 years ago, the other one was just as recent as 2 months ago. Technology is having this pervasive role in a lot of this different experience that I shared with you. So before, we used to talk about sci-fi movies when you'd see this robot, but now this is real. This is actually a robot that I was having a conversation with. And the thing is, it's going to become more and more. So we need to prepare ourselves for this changing work environment. So why am I telling you all this thing? The idea for this is to call you to action. That is the future that we are seeing we are going towards. What can you do as youth trying to be productive, as we are told in a few years this will be the workforce of the world? How can we then position ourselves to become engaged and to become productive? So number one, continuous learning. It's lifelong learning. It's not the old days where you finish school and you're at the epitome. No, you are going to be learning for the future. So we need to prepare ourselves for that. Innovation, improving yourself continuously. We need to think of technology that will develop solutions that are for Africa. So Africans for Africa using this technology. And the next thing is to focus on skills. Not so much on the knowledge, but what can you do with the skills that you have? Okay, time is up. So what we have as I work for a technology company, IBM, what we have is a platform called Digital Nation Africa, where we focus on learning by doing. So log on, start learning, and get the skills. Thank you.
Thank you, really appreciate it. Please, just one last round of applause for everyone who's spoken today and the TED Talk speakers. We'd like to get special intervention because we've been meaning to hear from both sides, government policy and, of course, educational institutions. Please allow me to call the UN resident coordinator from Gambia to give us special intervention and please her perspective on what's been happening today. Please.
Good afternoon. I am Aissata Dey. I'm the UNDP resident representative in the Gambia, and I'm delighted to hear all the interventions this morning, and to say that it's timely because in UNDP, maybe many of you have heard that we launched what we call the Accelerator Lab for the achievement of the SDGs, which are mainly to provide space and go back to the community and see where are the skills that are there, because sometimes people think that they need a level of degree, university degree, to really achieve. And I think what you just said, saying that each of us, and not only the youth, but maybe mainly also the youth, need to really have an open-minded, very huge curiosity, but also to observe what is around them, what the community needs, so that we can adapt what we are providing with the needs and lift those community out of poverty. And I think the country where we all stand here, is a great example on how solutions came from the community and from the Rwandans for themselves. So to say that these labs are opportunities that are given for youth around the globe, because UNDP is represented in over 176 countries, and in Africa we have 60 of them that are being set up not only for the UN, but mainly for the youth and for the communities, and to go back to them to see what are they doing as solutions that we can scale up and make them known around the globe. Basically, skills are, as you said, it's a continuous learning process, and I think all intervenants told that this morning. And basically also based on our own emotional intelligence. How are we mindful to ourselves? How are we mindful to serving? Because we are all in life for a purpose, and to make sure that we are also living and sharing what we already know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now things have changed. We were to head out, but we'll have the last 4 people who spoke just sit on the panel. Priscilla, please. Tanya, please. So we'll have 1 question for each, and then we'll wrap up. Does that work? So we'll start off with whoever takes the first seat will be the first person to be asked. Oh, yeah? Perfect. So we have a question for him. Anyone with a question? We'll start here, and then question? Yes.
Bonjour, je vais m'exprimer en français pour que ma question soit claire. Et ma question est en fait pour les 4. You can translate. Oh, okay. Ma question, c'est pour les entrepreneurs. Et je m'appelle Fatoumata Diarra, je viens du Mali et je fais partie d'une communauté de femmes entrepreneurs et femmes dans les technologies. Et beaucoup de mes amis sont dans le dilemme. Elles travaillent, elles veulent être entrepreneurs, mais elles ne peuvent pas quitter leur boulot parce qu'elles doivent avoir de l'argent à la fin du mois. Donc, quel est le conseil pour ces jeunes qui veulent entreprendre, mais qui doivent aussi travailler, être salariés pour avoir un revenu salarial?
Merci.
My name is Fatoumata Diarra. I'm from Mali, and I have a question for you about entrepreneurship, mainly for women who are employees but have ideas and would like to grow, to make them grow, but they have a dilemma on how do they continue to earn their salaries, but at the same time fulfill their dreams. So do you have any advice about that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I suppose you will translate it, or you understand the English? Okay. So my take on this would be, and also as previous speakers have mentioned, try and get to market as quickly as possible, and then innovate based on the feedback that you receive from your market, right? That way will help you. First of all, number one, know what it is that you're trying to deliver to your market, and be able to earn income from it as quickly as possible. So if you've got a product, an idea, or something that you want to sell to this market, develop it quickly, take it to the market. If they're able to pay you at that first moment, then you'll start getting income, and also in the process get feedback on how to improve it and understand them even better. I don't know if that gives you a reason, an answer.
Does that work? Sufficient?
Not. The dilemma is that she doesn't have resources outside the income that she's earning already. So,
okay, so the other thing that I would say is reach out to the local ecosystem that where you are based, who are supporting your innovation, so or supporting entrepreneurship. So like you've had, a lot of governments have got this program that are supporting entrepreneurship in a lot of countries. Previously, I've also been involved with AfriLabs. This is a network of innovation hubs that is located across the continent, and I can tell you through those innovation hubs, number one, you will get people who are in a similar situation like you are, who are looking at starting up a business. And in the process, you also come across some people who are looking to invest in people like you, who are looking at who could then support you to start getting your business off the ground, even while you are focusing on other things as well.
And you're invited to the UNDP lab. Perfect. A fantastic life experience from Elizabeth Tanya as well. Question for her? Right, please allow me to.
Hi, my name is Nabiondo Shaima Latifa from Uganda. I heard you talking about the technology you developed in Zimbabwe to help teachers deliver the best material to their students. We are doing the same innovation in Uganda. There is a team. So I want you to go through the challenges. How do you charge the teachers on subscription? How do you develop the content, like some of the things?
Thank you. I think I'll make my answer sort of a combination of your two questions. Africa, if you look at the way that we look like at the moment, we cannot afford to have 9-to-5 jobs. Us as young Africans have an obligation to have our day job, but also have something that we work on afterwards as well. It's going to be tough. There's very little financial capital for you to start your startup. And also our school system just doesn't prepare us for those kinds of things. So all the innovations that you've heard about today, I mentioned Tech Nights, I mentioned Muzinda Hub, we've got the technology from IBM, Aaron also mentioned something. Those are tools that are there to give you the skills needed to become an entrepreneur who is worth investing in. A lot of us young Africans, we come with our products and we expect people to give us money. A lot of times they're not even viable. So as entrepreneurs, as young people, we have to take advantage of these tools in order to get to a place where our businesses are good enough to invest in and are lucrative enough. We say Africa's open for business. Let's make our businesses investable. The second thing is that with your question, when education is very complex, there is no one size fits all. And it becomes even more complex when you come from countries that have very specific curricula. So Zimbabwe is very curriculum specific, which is why our ECD intervention is used in Zimbabwe and South Africa. There are different models that you're going to have to experiment with based on your market. Some of the things that I did in my startup was that I created an offline version for rural communities where I charged for training. So if you say to a teacher, I'll teach you, come for a course, they will pay. If you say subscribe to my technology, they're not going to pay. I also created textbooks and charged a premium on those. They love buying my textbooks, and that's how I cover the costs of my platform. So use design thinking and other methodology to see how you can tackle it as a problem-solving thing as opposed to a business model thing. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Practical, very practical. We have a question for Fiston. Fiston?
Thank you very much. My name is Johnson. I'm a young entrepreneur. I have a question for this man there. I was really inspired by your progress, and I have a question. Like, it's not like in the world when you have progress, some people are not happy about your progress. Some people are haters in your progress. And how do you handle critics? Critics related to your personal progress, either your social, economic progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Haters, they inspire me to work harder, you know. I remember back then when I was starting, it's not, most of our African countries have this oral culture. It's not like we have a written culture. So even members like in my family, they were thinking like I'm just losing my time. I just have nothing to do. But these days I'm the one laughing. So don't be discouraged. And I want to take this opportunity to comment on my sisters there from Mali question, getting caught between a job and wanting to jump into entrepreneurship. I was reading this book called Lean Startup, where they explain an entrepreneur is someone who does something without knowing that it will succeed or fail. Basically, it's a risk taker. But these days, I think there are also too many opportunities that you don't necessarily need to quit your job right away. The easiest way you can work with a co-founder, look for a co-founder, and maybe he enrolls in part of this ecosystem of startups, incubation, and from there, when the business is at the level of supporting you financially, you can go in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Finally, Priscilla, question. Could we please allow us to take one from the back, please?
Thank you very much. My name is Eme Kayumba. I work for Rural Development Initiative. Actually, work with the young. We are in youth and agriculture field. I'm interested in this session, skills for the future, and I want to ask the question to Priscilla. Actually, at some point, because you talk about passion, so at some point, when I see Africa, always we are struggling and trying to go behind other people's agenda. For example, it's very challenging here in Africa. Few months ago, I was somehow shocked when we lose one of our hero presidents here in Africa, but I heard that he was in Singapore in hospital. I ask myself, how can an African president lead a country for 30 years and he can't really manage to have a hospital to handle his health when he has a problem? So my question is this: what do you think, as young Africans here, what can we do about what kind of advocacy can we do for our leaders in terms of education and health? Because in my opinion, education and health is the very foundation for us. We struggle to get a job because at some point we are not skilled. Here in Africa, when you have money, rich people and people with good position where they can get good money, they take their kids in Harvard. How can we have our Harvard here in Africa? Thank you.
The microphone cannot let us down now.
Thank you for your question. Honestly, I think referring to what's behind me, as the youth, often we want to go back to our government with lots of complaints, whereas we can also decide to take the lead. So as a young professional, referring to your question, and it's valid, I think we should also take the lead. By taking the lead means let's take up the leadership roles as well. Because if a leader is in charge of health, then of course your views, the advocacy goes a little bit higher. But also taking the lead means for the most educated youth, let's not relocate to the USA. Let's not relocate to the Great Britain. Let's come back home and deploy our talents and skills. Of course, the government and the leaders have a big commitment to give to us and the nations, but what is our role? And I think that refers also to why Youth Connect was put in place, and that's why we're here. Let's also be able to take the leads, own it, and take some responsibility. And when we do that together with our governments, I mean, we have the energy, yeah? Some of our leaders are also getting sickly, like you just mentioned, but let's also be the push. Let's push them as the pushers to create that environment and infrastructure that we need in our countries. I also want to refer to my sister. She had a very good question. Unfortunately, I don't speak French, but I think you'll get it. So what I like to do, I've also been an entrepreneur. As much as I'm employed, I've started businesses that have definitely failed because my 8 hours a day are dedicated to my employer who gives me a nice salary that keeps me happy and pays all the bills. But I think what I've learned in life that also Fred Swanika said is you learn by learning, but also you learn by doing. So you can use the platform you have now, your job right now, either to create more savings as you plan for your next adventure or already start small. You can open up an online platform for whatever adventure, entrepreneur adventure you want, but still be perfect at your current job so that it pushes you to the next level when you are ready. And I mean, we don't have the funds, so let's be realistic. Deal with what you have at the moment. Deal with the finances and the resources you have to prepare you for the next level.
Thank you very much. A round of applause to our panelists. You may have your seat. Thank you, George. Thank you, everyone. We are now heading out for lunch. So thank you, everyone, for making time to be there. A special thanks to RDB and, of course, Mott MacDonald under the program of SID. We really appreciate everyone's time, a special intervention from the UN representative from Gambia. Thank you for making time to be with us. We appreciate you all. Do have a good lunch. Bon appetit. We'll see you shortly for the next sessions as they start. Thank you.